I lost about $30,000, and that was all the money I had. I thought it was going to be the end of my career.
Combined, Tasty Live hosts have over 100 years of trading experience, hundreds of thousands of trades under our belts, but every single one of us have had moments where we questioned if trading is the game for us. So I interviewed multiple traders with years of experience from trading on the floor of the Chicago Board Options Exchange, prop firms, and retail trading. So we went over best practices, how to know you're pointed in the right direction, things that successful traders are doing, and the keys to feeling confident as a trader. But first, let's listen to a few of these traders' biggest mistakes. Tony, was there ever a point in your career where you're like, maybe I'm not so cut out for this trading kind of thing?
There was one time about 3 months into my career. Remember, I started with $5,000, so I had a bad out trade, which, everything's computerized now, which is impossible. But an out trade was just a mistake between two traders. I thought I was doing calls. He thought he was doing puts. I lost on the out trade, about $30,000, and that was all the money I had. I had just started trading about 5-6 months prior to that, and I thought it was going to be the end of my career.
And $30,000 in what? The 1800s was like $1 million.
Hey, let me tell you something. $30,000 to me in 1983 was the most money I had ever seen in my entire life.
I feel like there's always going to be some trade that makes you question your sanity or question your ability to be successful at trading. But yeah, the one that stands out to me is my Facebook earnings trade. A couple of years ago, Facebook was trading at like 210, around 200, and they released earnings and there was a huge miss and it dropped from 200 to like 170 the next day. I think it bottomed out at around 135. I placed a strangle for earnings. And this is when I had, a smaller account, and I was taking, a couple $1,000s of heat on this position. And it got so big when Facebook was down at 135 that I had to exit the position. So that was frustrating for me because it was a high probability trade to begin with. But my risk was way too high, and I didn't account for the fact that it could possibly go from 200 down to 135. And that was really mentally debilitating because then I watched it go from 135 back up to 200 over the course of a year and a half. So
that's a great question, Errol, because one of the things that we've done on the Bad Trader Tour, which just concluded, I actually addressed that a lot. And one of the trades that did happen was really me buying puts in Facebook, and it was really my attitude that messed up the trade. Not so much the execution, but I could have handled that trade a whole lot better, and I definitely felt like I wanted to quit after that. But
there were definitely a few instances that come to mind that give me a little bit of PTSD when it comes to second guessing myself with trading. Off the top of my head, Peloton was a big one for me. Crude oil going negative, going to zero was a big one for me. And in 2019, there was a lot of chop in silver futures. And that was also one where I definitely beat myself up and second guessed my ability to do this. But I think the biggest thing I took away from that was controlling emotions, of course, controlling your size, and just because you strike out one time doesn't mean you leave the game. So it was just trying to pick myself up after that and reminding myself that number of occurrences is important and to not dwell on things that I could no longer control in my past trades.
That was my big lesson in understanding the realities of risk, but also trade size. Because if I had a larger account, I would have been able to hold that position and it would have been totally fine. But I was trading a little bit too big for that particular earnings announcement, and I wasn't able to hold the position.
I assume you were even looking at like the expected move, and it sounds like it well exceeded that expected move. So even by taking in those statistics account, it can kind of catch you off guard sometimes, it sounds like.
Yeah, 100%. And at the end of the day, we're dealing with imperfect information, and it is a probability game that we're playing. So if there's a 10% chance of X, Y, or Z happening, it's going to happen at some point. Yeah, that's why we talk about keeping risk really small, putting yourself in positions that are sustainable, and positions that you can hold through time can be really important.
You got to find ways to pick yourself off the mat, and that's exactly what I eventually did.
What are a few things, that a trader might be doing right to let them know they're on the right track? Because, maybe making some money here and there, losing money here and there, sometimes it can get confusing. Like, am I even in the right direction? So what are a few things that, might let them know I'm headed in the right direction?
Everybody, I think, answers this a little differently. I come from humble beginnings, so I start small. Other people start with huge aspirations. I'm going to make this 5,000, 30,000.
Right.
I like to try to make that 5,000 and say, I'm going to pay my electric bill this month. I'm going to pay. I'm going to take my family out for dinner this
Yeah.
month with my winnings. Especially if you have a job or something else you have to do, full time, and this is really just a way of trying to make some extra cash. So it's a nice way of kind of paying yourself instead of going out and
Yeah.
buying a new pair of kicks. I'm going to try to sound
Right.
cool like you, or something like that. Paying a
Yeah.
bill to make your life a little better.
I think the number one thing is definitely trading liquid markets. So you're going to have your winners, you're going to have your losers, but when you have your winners, you don't want to be giving up your potential positive P&L just to get out of the position. So
Okay.
making sure that we're dealing with liquid markets that are easy to get into and get out of, not dealing with situations where you're the only person in the market and it's really hard to get out, even if it's a winning position or a scratch or something like that. I think that's number one.
Following the model of where the VIX is trading currently and how much capital you deploy into the market, I think that's one of the things you can control. You can control your mindset around the current environment, how you're trading.
One thing that really has stuck with me over time, and it's definitely difficult in your first few months, is that, like you're saying, when you first power up your platform and you want to look at your P&L and you put so much of your emotion into a red number or a green number, I think something that means you're doing the right thing is, as you get further along in your journey and you're still powering up your platform, maybe that number doesn't have as big of an emotional effect on you day to day. So, what I mean by that is you're not putting so much into one trade or one position, and you're actually able to kind of take a step back and look at your entire portfolio and recognize, okay, this needs managing, this needs maybe a little bit of triaging, this should be covered. And doing that more mechanically and kind of understanding that you're becoming more robotic, but in a good way.
To me, it really comes down to confidence in trading. I think you'll be a successful trader when you're confident with yourself. That comes with repetition, like anything else in practice, and that's why you keep it small. I think they all feed on each other.
At what point then along your career did you get a little bit more confident? Was it your experience level? Was it just knowing that you have the ability to handle the worst, or what was it for you in your career?
I think it was a little bit of everything you just said. I think really being able to look at a market and be like, okay, this is the strategy I'm going to go with here because of X, Y, and Z, and just be able to make quick decisions. Being able to look at extrinsic value in different option cycles and looking at implied volatility and the implications of implied volatility relative to a stock's price or implied movement. I think really just being able to make quick decisions and look at a market and be like, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do very quickly, instead of being like, okay, here's a market, here's 5 strategies, let's walk through each of them. I don't really need to do that anymore, but I think that's relative to having more experience in the markets and having more experience with specific trades.
I moved away from the mentality that I had to know everything before jumping in. So rather than binging all the content in an hour or cramming kind of like you would college style, understanding that my success was going to be tied to habits every single day was one thing that made me feel like I'm actually starting to learn something and move away from an all or nothing mindset. And the other thing that really started to help me was actually being forced more or less into trying to teach it to somebody else. So absorbing from Tony and Tom and Pete and all of the other great traders at Tasty Live helped me so much. But when I actually had to start building my own slides for the show or going on the road and talking about strategies with other people that maybe didn't know as much as I did, that's really when it started to click even more for me, because I was emulating explaining something to like my former self. So if you're in that journey right now and you're looking to really start to have it more connect in your brain, try explaining it to a friend or a family member, and you might be surprised at how much you actually do know when you think you don't.
I would say about a year and a half into trading, I felt pretty confident and things were going well. Just so happened, I think that the trading environment suited the way I was trading at the time, and it worked out well. There's been other times where I wasn't as confident, and I would say maybe 2.5 years in, I was felt a little lost. Then next thing you know, 3.5 years in, and so my point is I think you go through times where you feel like, man, maybe I need to adjust something and change. And I think it just varies, it goes throughout time. Sometimes you feel a lot more confident than others because we get a lot of different trading environments. So I think over time, as you've seen a bunch of different things, you learn how you want to manage yourself in different markets.
I was trying to make my electric bill every day, and I was making, 2, 3, 4 times that. So
Okay.
then I said, you know what, maybe I know what I'm doing, or maybe I'm just really lucky. But I like what I see, so it came with consistent wins. I mean, that's the only way to measure it. Like,
Right,
right.
right.
I mean,
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's the only way to
yeah,
make it.
yeah.
If you're successful, then you're getting it.
Yeah, it almost kind of seems like it's so funny. Just trading can relate to like almost anything in life. Let's like you're a basketball player. It's like how do you gain confidence?
Yeah.
It's honestly from seeing your past results and seeing you did what you did,
Yeah.
and you inevitably start breeding that confidence.
Yeah, like you,
over time.
you're a confident, cocky basketball player. I've seen some of your videos.
Tony, I will dunk on you, Tony.
Yeah, no, I've seen some of your videos, and you would post those videos. And let's be honest. I mean, you post that video because your mechanics look good. You're gonna make the shot, so you post it. If you weren't confident, you don't post it.
That's a good point. That's a good point.